Fit into that dress, and I'll marry you." Jeff Stevenson raised a champagne flute, pointing to the golden gown suspended in the center of the ballroom. The explosion of laughter was instantaneous. 300 guests at Chicago's Stevenson Grand Charity Gala turned to see who was the butt of the joke. Brittany Saunders, 28, a janitor at the hotel hosting the event, stood frozen near the service entrance with her cleaning cart still in her hands. The gray uniform, 2 sizes too large, hung shapeless on her frame, concealing curves she had learned to hide from the scrutiny of people like these. Jeff, 41, tech billionaire and CEO of Stevenson Hotels, estimated net worth $4.8 billion, laughed too loudly. That performative laugh of someone who'd never been told no. His Armani suit jacket shifted as he gestured dramatically toward Brittany with his champagne glass. "I'm serious," he announced to the crowd. "Does anyone have a lawyer here? Let's draw up a prenup right now." The dress in question was the centerpiece of the exhibition, an exclusive creation by Italian designer Alessandro Moretti. Valued at $950,000, size 4, sweetheart neckline, fitted waist, a masterpiece designed for bodies sculpted in private gyms and maintained by personal trainers, charging $500 per session. Brittany felt the heat rise from her chest to her face, her brown skin flushing darker as humiliation bloomed like a stain she couldn't hide. Her eyes filled with tears that she blinked furiously to suppress. Not here, not in front of them. She had learned in her 4 years working luxury events that wealthy people possessed a particular gift: the ability to transform someone else's dignity into their evening's entertainment. "Come on, honey," a woman in a magenta gown called out, champagne sloshing in her glass. "Accept the offer. Billionaire husbands don't grow on trees." More laughter. Cell phones rose like a forest of glowing screens, flashes capturing the moment for Instagram stories. Stevenson Gala, Choka Charity Night, funny moments. Brittany lowered her head, gripped the handle of her cleaning cart so tightly her knuckles went pale against her brown skin, and began to walk. Each step was a battle against the instinct to run. Each burst of laughter behind her felt like a physical blow. "Hey, wait!" Jeff's voice cut through the noise, still dripping with cruel amusement. "Don't leave. The offer stands. 30 days. If in 30 days you can fit into that dress, I'll keep my word." The crowd erupted in applause, as if watching a reality show finale. Brittany didn't look back. She pushed her cart through the service door, the industrial hinges creaking. The moment the door swung shut, muffling the champagne-fueled laughter behind thick steel, she leaned against the cold concrete wall of the service corridor, finally let the tears fall. But something happened in that empty hallway, between industrial mop buckets and the sharp smell of disinfectant, between fluorescent lights humming overhead and towers of folded linens waiting to be distributed. Something inside her didn't shatter. It crystallized. The shame began to burn until it alchemized into something else entirely. Fury, focus, promise. What none of those easily entertained guests knew was that Brittany Saunders wasn't just a janitor. 4 years ago, she had been a rising star at Fashion Institute of Chicago, full scholarship recipient, perfect GPA, personally mentored by legendary designer Carolina Herrera during a summer internship, until her father suffered a massive heart attack at age 52. Dropping dead in the kitchen while making breakfast on an ordinary Tuesday morning. And Brittany had to choose her dreams or her family's survival. She chose survival. She dropped out 2 semesters before graduation, took on 3 jobs: janitorial work, weekend retail, overnight warehouse shifts, and became sole provider for her 3 younger siblings, Jaden, 16, Alicia, 14, Marcus, 12. 3 kids who needed food, rent, school supplies, and someone to sign permission slips when their father never would again. For 4 years, she swallowed humiliations like tonight's because she needed every paycheck to keep the lights on, to keep her siblings in school, to keep their small apartment in South Chicago from becoming just another eviction statistic. But tonight, something shifted. Brittany wiped her tears with the back of her hand, straightened her shoulders against that concrete wall, and made a silent vow. In 30 days, she would return. Not for the absurd wedding, not for their approval, but to prove that no one had the right to reduce her to a punchline because of her body or her position. What Jeff Stevenson also didn't know was that his innocent joke was about to trigger a cascade of events that would not only obliterate his carefully curated reputation, but expose the rot he'd buried beneath layers of philanthropy and PR spin. Because Brittany wouldn't be coming back alone. And when she did return, it wouldn't just be her appearance that had transformed. If you want to discover how an invisible janitor became the explosive truth that destroyed an arrogant billionaire's empire, subscribe to the channel. Because what comes next will prove that underestimating someone with nothing left to lose is the most expensive mistake money can't fix. Brittany didn't sleep that night. Sitting in the cramped kitchen of her South Chicago apartment, the one with peeling linoleum and a refrigerator that hummed too loudly, she opened her battered laptop and typed 4 words into the search bar: Jeff Stevenson labor violations. The results flooded her screen. Glossy articles about his innovative hotel tech integration. Photos of him shaking hands with mayors and senators. Features in Forbes calling him the hospitality disruptor. But buried beneath the glamorous press releases, Brittany found something different. An obscure Reddit thread: R. Stevenson Hotels employees, share your story here. Glassdoor reviews, most deleted, some archived. Toxic work environment. Retaliation for complaints. HR protects management, not workers. A years-old Chicago Tribune article, 3 paragraphs long, about a settled lawsuit. No details, just the word confidential, appearing 5 times. Interesting, Brittany murmured, methodically bookmarking links and screenshotting pages. The next morning at 4:30 a.m., Brittany was standing outside Southside Iron, a no-frills community gym 3 blocks from her apartment. It wasn't fancy. Rusted free weights, cracked mirrors held together with duct tape. No air conditioning, even in Chicago summers. But the monthly membership was $25, and the owner, Coach Diamond Harris, had kind eyes that didn't judge. The door unlocked with a metallic click. Diamond, a 52-year-old former Olympic track athlete with silver-streaked locks, looked surprised to see anyone this early. "You're here early," Diamond said, holding the door open. "I have 30 days to fit into a size 4 dress," Brittany said flatly. Diamond paused mid-step, studying her carefully. Recognition flickered across her face. "You're the woman from the video." "Yes." "And you want to do this for him? For some billionaire who humiliated you?" "No." Brittany's voice was cold steel. "I want to do this for me, and then I want to destroy him." A slow smile spread across Diamond's face. "Then we start right now. But you follow my program exactly. Every single day. No shortcuts, no excuses." Brittany nodded once. What she didn't say, what she couldn't say yet, was that fitting into the dress was only half the plan. The other half was dismantling the man who thought she was a joke. Over the next 72 hours, Brittany built a routine that would have broken most people. 4:30 a.m. gym, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. work at Stevenson Grand, pushing her janitor's cart through marble lobbies and executive suites. 3:30 p.m. to 5 p.m., gym again. 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. Home with her siblings. Jaden's algebra homework, Alicia's history project, Marcus's spelling words. Then after they slept, research until her eyes burned. That's how she found Simone. Meanwhile, across the city in his penthouse office overlooking Lake Michigan, Jeff Stevenson was having a very different 72 hours. His PR chief, Gerald, a nervous man with thinning hair and permanent stress lines, stood in front of Jeff's desk holding an iPad like it might explode. "Sir, we need to discuss the video." "What about it?" Jeff didn't look up from his emails. "It's at 10 million views. There's a petition with 250,000 signatures demanding a public apology. The hashtag #FarkStevenson is trending in 6 countries. Jeff finally looked up, irritation flashing across his face. "It's a joke that got blown out of proportion. It'll die down." "Sir, with respect, it's not dying down. It's accelerating. Major outlets are picking it up. The Tribune called for comment. So did CNN." "Then handle it," Jeff snapped. "That's what I pay you for. Issue a statement about context or humor being subjective or whatever the focus groups like. And get it scrubbed from social media." "We've tried scrubbing it. Every time we take it down, 100 more copies go up. It's the Streisand effect. I don't care what it's called." Jeff's voice rose. "Make it disappear. Pay someone. Buy the platforms if you have to. This is a non-story about a nobody." Gerald left the office, shoulders hunched, already typing emergency messages to their crisis management firm. Alone, Jeff did something uncharacteristic. He opened Twitter, something he normally delegated to his social media team, and searched his own name. The results made his jaw tighten. This is what billionaires really think of working people. Imagine having $4.8 billion and still needing to punch down for entertainment. "Does anyone know who she is? I want to send her money. Fire this man. Boycott Stevenson hotels." For the first time in years, Jeff Stevenson felt something his money couldn't erase. Public shame. He closed the app, but the discomfort lingered like smoke in his throat. Simone Whitaker, Jeff Stevenson's former executive assistant. Employment dates, 2017 to 2020. Departure reason listed on LinkedIn, pursuing new opportunities. But on an obscure employment forum, under a carefully anonymized username, SW Chicago 2020, Brittany found a different story, a story about late-night emergency meetings that were never about emergencies, about comments on clothing that had nothing to do with professionalism, about a supply closet and a threat disguised as career advice. Brittany created a burner email account and sent a carefully worded message. "I saw your story. I believe you. I was humiliated by the same man 3 days ago. You might have seen the video. If you're willing to talk, I think we can help each other. No pressure. But I'm not going away quietly." She hit send at 1:47 a.m. and didn't expect a response. Her phone rang at 4:23 a.m. "You're the woman from the video," a woman's voice said without preamble. Sharp, guarded, exhausted. "The janitor he mocked at the gala. I saw it on Twitter. 3 million views now." Brittany's stomach dropped. 3 million. "Most of the comments are on your side," the voice continued. "But that doesn't change what he did. Why did you contact me?" "Because I saw your lawsuit," Brittany said carefully. "And I have a feeling you're not the only one." Silence stretched across the line. Then, "Meet me tomorrow. Lou Malnati's on State Street. 7 p.m. Come alone. I need to look you in the eye before I tell you what I know." The line went dead. The next evening, Brittany sat in a back booth at Lou Malnati's, her hands wrapped around a water glass she hadn't touched. The restaurant smelled like garlic, tomato sauce, and melted cheese. The kind of deep dish place where Chicago locals brought tourists to prove a point. A woman in her late 30s entered, scanning the room with careful precision before her eyes landed on Brittany. Elegant charcoal blazer, dark hair pulled into a severe bun, eyes that had witnessed too much and now held only calculation. "Simone Whitaker," the woman said, sliding into the booth, opposite Brittany without offering her hand. 6 years as Jeff Stevenson's executive assistant. I know everything about you now. The video is everywhere. Tell me about him, Brittany said simply. Simone laughed, but there was no humor in it. Where do I start? The late-night meetings in his suite that had nothing to do with business? The way he'd comment on my skirts, my necklines, whether I was wearing the perfume he liked? The time he cornered me in the supply room and told me if I was smart about my career advancement, I'd be more friendly. Did you report it? To his HR department? Simone's voice was acid. Oh, I tried. They brought me into a conference room with 3 of his lawyers, made me sign an NDA thicker than a phone book, gave me 6 months severance and told me if I ever spoke publicly about my experiences, they'd sue me into bankruptcy. That was 3 years ago. I haven't worked in corporate since. He made sure of that. 1 phone call from Jeff Stevenson, and suddenly you're unemployable. Brittany leaned forward. What if I told you I think there's a way to make him accountable? But I need evidence. Real evidence. Simone studied her for a long moment, her fingers drumming against the table. The sound echoed in the space between them. Tap, tap, tap. Like a countdown to a decision that couldn't be unmade. Then she reached into her leather bag and slid a small flash drive across the worn wood. I kept copies. Everything. Emails, text messages, voice recordings I made when I realized what was happening. I've been too terrified to use them. But if you're serious about taking him down... She paused. There are others. Women who left quietly. A man in accounting who got fired right before his pension vested. Janitors and housekeepers who've been documenting violations for years but have no power to do anything about it. Can you connect me with them? Maybe. Simone's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. But Brittany, you need to understand something. Jeff Stevenson will destroy you if he finds out what you're doing. He has billions of dollars, an army of lawyers, and absolutely zero conscience. He treats people like disposable commodities. Brittany thought about her siblings sleeping in their shared bedroom, about her father's funeral 4 years ago, about every humiliation she'd swallowed to keep them fed and safe. Then I better make sure I get to him first. Simone kept her word. 2 days later, Brittany found herself in a modest home in Pilsen, sitting at a kitchen table that smelled like café con leche and cinnamon. Maria Gonzalez, 48, lead housekeeper with 19 years at Stevenson Hotels, poured coffee with hands that had cleaned 10,000 rooms. 19 years, Maria said, settling into the chair across from Brittany. I've cleaned Jeff Stevenson's office since he was 27, and his father handed him the company keys. I've watched him transform from an entitled rich kid into something worse. Oh, man who genuinely believes service workers are furniture. What do you mean? Brittany asked. Maria pulled out a worn spiral notebook, its pages covered in meticulous handwriting. Dates, times, incidents. For 5 years, I've been documenting everything. Wage theft. They make us clock out, but keep working. Sometimes 2 or 3 hours past our shift. Denied overtime pay even though we're logging 50, 60-hour weeks. Employees fired 3 weeks before their pension vests. Managers who threaten to call immigration when people complain, even though we're all documented. Harassment complaints that disappear into HR and never resurface. She slid the notebook across to Brittany. 23 current employees willing to testify if someone can protect them from retaliation. But no one ever has. Whistleblowers don't win, Mija. They lose their jobs, get blacklisted, watch their families suffer. Brittany's hands trembled as she flipped through pages of documentation. Each entry was a person's dignity stolen, cataloged in blue ink. Maria, why didn't you take this to the authorities yourself? Because I have 4 children, Maria said, her voice fierce now. Because I'm the primary breadwinner. Because the system protects men like Jeff Stevenson, not women like me. But if you have a real plan, if there's genuine protection for people who speak up, then we're ready. All of us. The next meeting happened at Harold's Chicken Shack. Raymond Lewis, 63, sat across from Brittany with a plate of chicken and waffles between them and 30 years of corporate experience in his eyes. His silver hair was neatly trimmed, his suit worn but well-maintained. The uniform of a man who'd spent his life respecting institutions that never respected him back. 37 years I gave that company, Raymond said, spreading financial documents across the sticky table. Started in the mailroom in 1987, worked my way up to senior accountant. 3 weeks before my retirement, Jeff Stevenson personally called me into his office and fired me. Said they were restructuring, no severance, no retirement package. Just security escorting me out with my desk contents in a cardboard box. Why would he do that? Raymond's smile was bitter. Because I questioned the books. Payroll discrepancies that didn't add up. Money being shifted between subsidiaries to dodge taxes. When I raised concerns to the CFO, suddenly I was difficult. A problem employee. They created a fake paper trail of performance issues that never existed in my previous 36 years. He tapped the documents with one finger. But I'm old school, Brittany. I kept backups of everything. Payroll records showing systematic wage theft totaling $4.2 million over 5 years, mostly from housekeeping and janitorial staff. Tax documents that would make the IRS very interested. If someone wanted to build a federal case, this would be Exhibit A. Brittany looked at the evidence spreading across the table. Simone's harassment documentation, Maria's incident log, Raymond's financial records. Pieces of a puzzle that could dismantle an empire. I need all of this organized, she said quietly. And I need a lawyer who won't back down from a billionaire. Raymond smiled for the first time. My niece, Keisha. She works for a firm that specializes in employment law and whistleblower protection. But Brittany, his voice became serious. Once you start this process, there's no going back. He will come after you with everything he has. He already came after me, Brittany said, remembering the laughter, the cell phone flashes, the walk of shame through the ballroom. What else can he take? By day 18, Brittany had lost 22 pounds. But the transformation went deeper than numbers on a scale. Her movements had become precise, controlled. Her eyes held a new intensity that made people look away first. In the mirror at Southside Iron, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Coach Diamond watched her complete a brutal hit session. Burpees, mountain climbers, box jumps that would have destroyed her 3 weeks ago. You're ready physically, Diamond said, handing her a towel. But Brittany, you understand this isn't really about the dress, right? I know. Brittany wiped sweat from her face. The dress is the symbol. The real fight is what comes after. Diamond nodded approvingly. Good. Because I've trained Olympic athletes, professional fighters, people preparing for the biggest moments of their lives. But I've never seen someone train with this kind of focused fury. Whatever you're planning, make it count. That evening, Brittany sat in her apartment's tiny second bedroom, the space that used to be her design studio before it became a storage room for broken dreams. She pulled her old sewing machine from the closet, blowing dust off the cover. Her siblings appeared in the doorway, drawn by the unfamiliar sound of the machine whirring to life. "You're sewing again?" Alicia said softly, her 14-year-old voice full of wonder. "You haven't touched that machine since Dad died." "I never stopped designing in my head," Brittany said, threading the needle with steady hands. "I just stopped believing I was allowed to." She worked through the night on an elegant black dress. Simple lines, powerful silhouette. A statement that said she defined herself on her own terms. When she finished at 3:47 a.m., she hung it carefully on the back of her door and allowed herself one moment of pride before exhaustion pulled her toward 3 hours of sleep. Meanwhile, across town in a glass-walled conference room, attorney Keisha Lewis sat with her firm's senior partners reviewing the evidence Brittany had compiled. Victoria Allen, the silver-haired managing partner, shook her head in astonishment. "This is ironclad," Victoria said, spreading documents across the mahogany table. "Wage theft, sexual harassment, financial fraud, obstruction of justice. The U.S. Attorney's Office will want this. Department of Labor will want this. The question isn't whether we have a case, it's how we time it and how we protect the witnesses." "There's a second gala in 5 days," Keisha explained. "Stevenson Grand is hosting a Unity and Excellence charity event. Jeff will be there. The golden dress will be auctioned. Our client wants to confront him publicly with the evidence." Victoria considered this, drumming her fingers against the table. Risky, very risky, but potentially brilliant. If we coordinate with federal investigators to be present in plain clothes, and if we have media positioned to document everything. She smiled slowly. "This could work, but your client needs to understand. She's about to become the most famous whistleblower in the country. Her life will never be private again." When Keisha called Brittany with this warning, Brittany didn't hesitate. "My life hasn't been private since 3 million people watched me get humiliated. My life hasn't been my own since I was 24, and my father died, and I became responsible for 3 kids. I've been surviving. Now I want to live." Keisha paused, then said quietly, "Then let's make sure you get that chance. We move in 5 days." The final pieces were falling into place. Physical transformation nearly complete. Legal strategy locked. Evidence organized and verified. Witnesses protected by attorney-client privilege. All that remained was the confrontation itself. The moment when the invisible became impossible to ignore. Jeff Stevenson was in a foul mood. The video had reached 18 million views. Corporate sponsors for the upcoming Unity and Excellence Gala were getting nervous, asking pointed questions about brand alignment and company values. His father had called 3 times from retirement in Naples, each call more agitated than the last. "Jeffrey, what is this disaster I'm seeing all over the internet? We built this company on dignity and service to others." "It's handled, Dad. Just a PR situation that got blown out of proportion. It'll blow over." "It better blow over quickly. The board is asking questions. Don't you dare embarrass this family's legacy." After the 3rd call, Jeff threw his phone across his penthouse office hard enough to crack the screen. Gerald, his perpetually nervous chief of staff, took an involuntary step backward. "Sir, perhaps if we issued a formal apology." "I will not apologize to some janitor for making a joke." With respect, sir, the optics are becoming increasingly problematic. The petition now has over 400,000 signatures. Several corporate clients have quietly expressed concerns. Get out, Jeff said through clenched teeth. Just get out. Alone in his office, Jeff did something uncharacteristic. He opened Instagram, something he normally delegated to his social media team, and searched for Brittany Saunders. Nothing. No profile. No presence. Just the video of her humiliation replaying endlessly. Across 1 million feeds, each share another knife in his carefully cultivated image. For just a moment, something almost like regret flickered in his chest. But he crushed it immediately. She was nobody. This would pass. Everything always passed when you had enough money and lawyers. 3 days before the gala, Brittany tried on the golden dress. She stood in Maria's bedroom while Maria, Simone, and Coach Diamond waited in the living room. When she emerged, silence fell like snow. The dress fit perfectly. Not just well, perfectly. The golden fabric caught the lamplight like captured fire against her brown skin. The sweetheart neckline framed her collarbones. The fitted waist accentuated curves she'd spent years hiding. She looked regal, transformed, dangerous. Dios mío, Maria whispered, her hand over her mouth. Simone's eyes filled with tears. He's going to regret everything he ever said to you. Brittany looked at herself in Maria's full-length mirror and saw not just physical transformation, but the culmination of 4 years of sacrifice, 30 days of calculated preparation, and a lifetime of swallowed dignity finally demanding to be heard. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with the attorneys one final time, she said. Then the day after, we execute. Everyone knows their positions? Maria nodded. 23 current employees will be scattered throughout the gala as guests. We've bought tickets through a donor who sympathizes with workers' rights. We'll have our phones ready to record everything. Simone added, I've contacted the other women, the ones who settled with NDAs. 3 are willing to appear if we guarantee legal protection. We're ready. Coach Diamond squeezed Brittany's shoulder. You've done the physical work. You've done the investigative work. Now you just need to do the hardest work, standing in front of him and everyone he's ever impressed and telling your truth. Brittany took one last look at herself in the golden dress. I'm not just telling my truth. I'm telling the truth about him, about what he's built on stolen wages and buried complaints, about who he really is when the cameras aren't rolling and the speeches aren't being written by PR teams. She changed back into her regular clothes, carefully hanging the dress in a garment bag. Tomorrow they would coordinate final logistics with the attorneys. Tomorrow, federal investigators would receive their briefing about where to position themselves. Tomorrow, journalists would get anonymous tips about a major story breaking at the Stevenson Grand. But tonight, Brittany allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in years. Not hope. Hope was too fragile, too naive. Something harder. Something that tasted like steel and burned like righteousness. Tomorrow, she would stop being invisible. The Stevenson Grand Ballroom glittered like a jewelry box. 400 guests in evening wear milled beneath crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's houses. The golden dress stood on its mannequin at the room's center, spotlit like a holy relic. Waiters circulated with champagne that cost $300 per bottle. A string quartet played Vivaldi in the corner. Jeff Stevenson worked the room with the ease of someone who'd never questioned his right to every space he occupied. Navy Tom Ford suit, Patek Philippe watch, smile that had been perfected over 41 years of getting exactly what he wanted. News cameras were positioned around the perimeter, covering what everyone believed would be a triumphant return to charity work after that unfortunate incident with the staff member. What no one except a select few knew. Attorneys Keisha Lewis and Victoria Allen were positioned among the guests, dressed in evening gowns, clutching champagne they wouldn't drink. Raymond sat at a table with journalists from the Chicago Tribune and Wall Street Journal, invited under the pretense of covering the charity auction. 2 federal investigators from the Department of Labor, Special Agents Morrison and Patel, circulated in plainclothes, blending seamlessly with philanthropists and socialites. Maria and 22 other Stevenson Hotel's employees were scattered throughout the room, their phones positioned, their resolve hardened by years of watching injustice go unchallenged. At exactly 8:00 p.m., the main doors opened. Brittany Saunders entered. She wore the black dress she'd designed, elegant, simple, a statement that whispered power instead of screaming it. Her natural hair was styled in beautiful coils that caught the light. She walked with her head high, shoulders back, every inch of her radiating the quiet strength of someone who'd already survived the worst and discovered she was still standing. The room didn't immediately notice. Conversations continued. Champagne flowed. But Maria saw her. Simone saw her. The Allied employees saw her. And one by one, they moved into position. Jeff was mid-laugh with the mayor of Chicago, some joke about property taxes and political fundraising, when he saw movement at the edge of his peripheral vision. Someone approaching with purpose. He turned, preparing his charitable donor smile, his hand already extending for a handshake. Then he stopped. His hand froze mid-extension. His smile cracked like old paint. The woman walking toward him looked familiar, but fundamentally different. She moved through the crowd like water finding its level. Inevitable, unstoppable. She walked directly to him, cutting through his circle of admirers and political allies. "Mr. Stevenson," Brittany said, her voice clear and steady as a bell. "Do you remember me?" Jeff's smile completed its collapse. Recognition dawned slowly, like horror in a nightmare. You're Brittany Saunders. 30 days ago in this very ballroom, you made me a promise." The conversations around them began to quiet. People turned to watch. Someone whispered, "Wait, is that the woman from the video?" The whisper spread like fire, through dry grass. Cell phones began to rise. Recording lights blinked red in the dimness. Jeff's PR instincts kicked in, his brain scrambling for damage control. "Look, that was just entertainment for the gala. Surely you understood it was all in good fun." "I understood perfectly," Brittany interrupted, her voice cutting through his excuses like a scalpel. "You understood that I was just a janitor, someone you could humiliate for applause, someone who wouldn't fight back because she needed her paycheck too much to risk losing it." More cell phones rose. The journalists at Raymond's table were suddenly alert, pens poised over notebooks. The federal investigators moved closer, carefully casual. Jeff's face began to redden. "This is neither the time nor the place for—" "Actually, this is exactly the place." Brittany gestured toward the golden dress on its mannequin, spotlit at the room's center. "You said if I could fit into that dress in 30 days, you'd marry me. Well, I can fit into that dress now. Want me to prove it? Should I try it on right here, or would you prefer I do it in front of everyone?" Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Jeff's face went from red to pale. "You can't be serious. That was obviously a ridiculous—" "You're right," Brittany said, her voice hardening into something that made people take a step back. "It was ridiculous. Just like it's ridiculous that you've spent years systematically stealing wages from janitorial and housekeeping staff. Just like it's ridiculous that you've buried sexual harassment complaints from at least 8 women. Just like it's ridiculous that you fire employees 3 weeks before their pensions vest. Just like it's ridiculous that you've built a $4.8 billion empire on treating workers as disposable commodities. The room went utterly, completely silent. You could have heard a champagne bubble pop. Jeff's face drained of all color. You have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. You're clearly disturbed, and I think you need to leave before... Then let's disturb everyone together, Brittany said. Maria stepped forward. Simone stepped forward. 8 other women stepped forward. Raymond stood from his table. They formed a semicircle around Jeff, a ring of witnesses who'd been silent too long. The charity projection screen, meant to display photos of philanthropic work, suddenly flickered. Documents began to appear. Emails, payroll records, text messages, all enlarged for 400 guests to see with perfect clarity. The massive screen displayed evidence like an indictment from heaven. Email threads appeared first, blown up large enough for everyone in the ballroom to read. From Jeff Stevenson. To Robert Allen, CFO. Subject: Raymond Lewis. Fire Lewis before September 1st. Don't care about the reason. Build a paper trail if needed. Can't afford the pension payout, and he's asking too many questions about the subsidiary transfers. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Journalists began typing frantically. The mayor took a visible step away from Jeff. Next came payroll records, highlighted in yellow to show the discrepancies. Housekeeping staff clocked out at 3 p.m. But security footage timestamps showed them still working until 5:30 p.m., 6 p.m., sometimes later. Day after day, week after week. Thousands of unpaid hours adding up to millions in stolen wages. Then text messages. Jeff to HR Director Angela Martinez. Another harassment complaint from housekeeping about Rodriguez? Jesus Christ. Offer her $50K to sign an NDA and disappear. Make sure the agreement has teeth. These people are replaceable, but lawsuits are expensive. The silence in the room was absolute. Even the string quartet had stopped playing, their bows frozen above their instruments. Jeff's voice rose in panic. This is fabricated. I have no idea where you got these doctored documents, but I'll sue for defamation. From your own systems, Brittany said calmly. Turns out, when you leave your laptop unlocked in your executive suite, and when you treat your janitorial staff like furniture, they become very good at being invisible. And invisible people see everything. She nodded to Raymond. The elderly man stood from his table, his voice steady and dignified, carrying across the silent ballroom. Raymond Lewis, 37 years with Stevenson Hotels and Technologies, fired 3 weeks before my retirement when I questioned financial irregularities. I kept copies of everything, every payroll discrepancy, every suspicious transfer, every conversation with executives about acceptable methods of avoiding pension obligations. Simone stepped forward next, her voice shaking slightly, but never breaking. Simone Whittaker, executive assistant for 6 years, sexually harassed, cornered in supply closets, told my career advancement depended on being friendlier. When I reported it to HR, they silenced me with an NDA and made sure I'd never work in corporate again. I kept recordings of everything. Maria spoke next, her accent thick with emotion. Maria Gonzalez, lead housekeeper for 19 years. I've documented every labor violation, every stolen wage, every threat against workers who dared to complain. 23 current employees willing to testify under oath. One by one, the others spoke. Former employees forced out under false pretenses. Current workers who'd endured years of systematic exploitation. Each testimony was brief but devastating, each one adding another crack to Jeff's crumbling facade. Jeff's lawyers were pushing through the crowd now, trying to reach him. "Mr. Stevenson, don't say anything else, don't respond." But Jeff's carefully constructed control was disintegrating in real time. "You're all lying. This is extortion. Some coordinated attack by disgruntled employees. I'll sue every single one of you into bankruptcy." "Sue us with what?" Brittany's voice was ice. "Your reputation? Your credibility? Your father's legacy that you've corrupted into something unrecognizable?" She pulled out her phone, pressing play. Audio filled the ballroom, a recording from a board meeting 6 months earlier. Jeff's voice was unmistakable, dripping with contempt. "Look, these people don't understand business. They show up, they clean, they leave. If they complain, we document something minor and fire them for cause. We keep turnover high so we never have to pay long-term benefits. That's basic operational efficiency. If they don't like it, McDonald's is always hiring." Laughter on the recording, other executives agreeing, treating worker exploitation as a punchline. In the ballroom now, horrified silence. The mayor was actively distancing himself, moving toward the exit. Corporate sponsors were making urgent phone calls. Board members present looked stricken, their faces pale with the recognition of legal liability. Attorney Victoria Allen approached with the federal investigators. "Mr. Stevenson, these are Special Agents Morrison and Patel from the Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division. They'd like to ask you some questions about these allegations of systematic wage theft." Jeff's face had gone the color of old newspaper. I need to speak with my attorneys immediately." "Of course," Agent Morrison said, his voice professionally neutral. "But we will need you to come to our field office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp. And we'll be executing a warrant for your company's financial records, payroll systems, and email servers." A journalist from the Wall Street Journal stood. "Mr. Stevenson, how do you respond to allegations of wage theft totaling over $4 million from your lowest-paid employees?" Jeff looked around wildly, like a trapped animal seeking escape. His lawyers were pulling him toward a side exit. His carefully cultivated image, the self-made tech innovator, the philanthropist, the business genius, was disintegrating before 400 witnesses and dozens of cameras. As security rushed him out, he looked back once at Brittany, not with anger, not with contempt, but with the belated, crushing realization that he had destroyed himself the moment he decided she didn't deserve basic human respect. The ballroom erupted. Journalists swarmed the employees willing to give statements. Cameras flashed like lightning. Maria was crying. Simone was shaking. Raymond stood tall and dignified, finally vindicated after years of being called a liar. And Brittany stood at the center of it all, the golden dress forgotten on its mannequin, because she'd just proven something more valuable than fitting into any garment designed for someone else's vision of beauty. She'd proven that power without accountability is just tyranny in expensive suits. The video of the confrontation went viral in a way that made the original humiliation seem quaint. 50 million views in 72 hours. Every major news network played it on loop, the moment when documents appeared on screen, when voices of the silenced finally spoke. When Jeff Stevenson's facade cracked like cheap porcelain. Hashtag Justice for Brittany trended globally. But more importantly, hashtag Stevenson workers began trending too. Current and former employees from hotels across the country sharing their own stories of exploitation, of stolen wages, of harassment buried by HR departments protecting executives instead of workers. Within 48 hours, Stevenson Hotel's stock plummeted 52%. The board held an emergency session and placed Jeff on administrative leave. corporate euphemism for forced resignation pending investigation. 3 major clients canceled contracts worth $80 million. The Chicago mayor's office opened its own investigation into the company's municipal contracts and tax abatements. By week 3, the federal charges were filed. The U.S. Attorney's Office announced a comprehensive criminal investigation into wage theft, labor law violations, financial fraud, and obstruction of justice. The Department of Labor estimated at least 400 current and former employees were owed back wages and damages. Jeff held one disastrous press conference. He stood behind a podium looking diminished, reading from a prepared statement about regrettable misunderstandings and taking these allegations with utmost seriousness. He refused all questions. His father issued a statement from retirement that made headlines. "I am profoundly ashamed and disappointed. This is not the company I built. This is not the legacy I intended to leave." Week 6 brought the civil lawsuit. Attorney Victoria Allen filed on behalf of 87 plaintiffs, current and former Stevenson Hotels employees. The suit sought $25 million in damages, back wages, and punitive measures. Brittany became the face of the case almost immediately. News outlets called her the Golden Dress Whistleblower. She was interviewed by major networks, her story told and retold, the fashion student forced to abandon her dreams, the janitor who endured years of humiliation, the woman who decided enough was enough. But it wasn't easy. Online trolls attacked her viciously. Conservative media outlets accused her of weaponizing victimhood, of coordinating some elaborate shakedown. Death threats arrived via email and social media. Her siblings needed security escorts at school after someone posted their address online. In a raw interview with NPR that became its most downloaded podcast episode of the year, Brittany spoke with exhausted honesty. People keep asking if it was worth it. They see the threats, the invasion of privacy, the hate mail. But they don't see the 87 workers who can finally speak without fear. They don't see the systems being questioned for the first time. They don't see the messages I get every day from young black women saying, "I thought I had to accept disrespect to survive. But you showed me I don't have to. So, yes, it's worth it. It's worth every sleepless night." Week 12 brought resolution. Jeff Stevenson accepted a plea deal to avoid trial. Guilty plea to labor law violations, systematic wage theft, and obstruction of justice. Sentence: 4 years in federal prison, eligible for parole after serving minimum of 30 months. $8 million in personal fines. Lifetime ban from serving as an officer or director of any publicly traded company. The civil suit settled for $18.5 million. Distributed among the 87 plaintiffs according to their documented damages. Brittany received the largest portion, $800,000 for documented wage theft, emotional distress, and defamation damages. She immediately established a scholarship fund for children of service workers pursuing higher education. Stevenson Hotels underwent complete restructuring. New CEO brought in from outside. Company paid $12 million in back wages to current and former employees. Agreed to 5 years of independent auditing and labor practice monitoring. Maria Gonzalez was promoted to Director of Employee Relations with full authority to investigate and address workplace complaints. The empire Jeff had inherited and corrupted was being rebuilt by the very workers he'd treated as invisible. 6 months after the confrontation, Brittany stood in a design studio at Fashion Institute of Chicago, her workspace covered with fabric samples, sketches, and half-finished garments that represented the dreams she'd deferred but never abandoned. She'd returned to school on a full scholarship, the institution eager to support a student whose story had captured national attention. But Brittany was grateful they let her work speak for itself. Her senior showcase collection was titled Invisible No More. 12 pieces that each told the story of a worker whose labor built the world, but whose name no one remembered. Maria's dress featured hidden pockets filled with cleaning supplies transformed into decorative elements. Feather dusters became elegant plumes, spray bottles became structured accents. Raymond's suit jacket had financial documents printed subtly into the silk lining, visible only when light hit it correctly. Simone's ensemble incorporated office supplies as architectural elements. Paper clips formed delicate chainmail. Manila folders became origami flowers. The golden dress, the original catalyst for everything, was being prepared for permanent exhibition at the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. The museum's curator had called personally to request it. The plaque would read, "Symbol of dignity reclaimed through courage, collective action, and the refusal to remain silent. Brittany Saunders, 2024. At home, her siblings were thriving. Jaden had a full basketball scholarship to DePaul University. Alicia was taking advanced art classes and talking about design school herself. Marcus was getting straight A's and had stopped asking when they'd have to move because they couldn't make rent. They were no longer living paycheck to paycheck, no longer one emergency away from disaster. Coach Diamond still trained Brittany 3 mornings a week, though now the focus was strength and wellness rather than transformation for external validation. During one session, Diamond said, "You know, I've trained Olympic athletes, professional fighters, celebrities preparing for movie roles. But watching you fight for yourself and everyone else, that's the championship level that matters most." The Chicago Tribune ran a feature for the 1-year anniversary. How Brittany Saunders Changed Corporate Accountability in America. The article detailed the ripple effects. 12 other companies in the hospitality industry had voluntarily implemented third-party labor audits. 5 states had introduced new whistleblower protection legislation. Worker organizing was experiencing a resurgence. Jeff Stevenson, interviewed from FCI Terre Haute Federal Prison, looked like a different person. The designer suits were gone, replaced by prison khaki. The confident swagger had evaporated. His eyes held something they'd never held before, the weight of consequence. "I underestimated her," he said quietly to the prison counselor conducting his mandatory rehabilitation interview. "I thought she was just nobody. Some janitor I could mock for entertainment. But she was paying attention to everything. She was brilliant. She was strategic. And I was too arrogant to see past my own entitlement. I destroyed everything my father built, his company, his reputation, his legacy, because I couldn't see past my own sense of superiority. That's what I'll be remembered for now." Brittany watched clips of the interview in her apartment with Maria, Simone, and Raymond. The 4 had become genuine friends, bonded by shared trauma and collective triumph. They gathered once a month for dinner, a support system forged in fire. "Do you feel vindicated?" Maria asked, refilling wine glasses. Brittany considered the question seriously. "I feel tired. I feel free. I feel angry it took this much. Public humiliation, a month of investigation, federal charges to get basic accountability. But mostly," she looked around at the people who'd fought alongside her, "I feel like we proved something important. That invisible people are only invisible because powerful people choose not to see them. And when we force them to look, when we make ourselves impossible to ignore, everything changes." Graduation day arrived with spring sunshine, and the kind of optimism that felt earned rather than naive. Brittany walked across the stage at Navy Pier's grand ballroom to thunderous applause. Her collection had won the senior showcase. 3 prestigious design houses had offered her positions. She was turning them all down to launch her own ethical fashion brand focused on hiring and training workers from service industries, paying them living wages, offering profit sharing, treating them like the essential humans they were. At the reception afterward, a young black woman, maybe 19, approached nervously, clutching a program. "Miss Saunders, I need to tell you something." The girl's voice shook. "I saw your story last year when I was working at a fast food restaurant. My manager was stealing our tips and making us work off the clock. I thought that's just how it was, that we had to accept it because we needed the job. But watching you fight back, I reported him to the state labor board. He was fired and fined. And now I'm here, starting design school in the fall. First person in my family to go to college." Brittany hugged her tightly. Feeling tears, she thought she'd exhausted somehow finding their way back. This was the real victory. Not the settlement money, not even the justice, though that mattered, but becoming living proof that speaking up changes the world, that refusing to stay silent creates space for others to find their voices too. That evening, Brittany stood in her apartment wearing the black dress she'd designed, the one she'd worn to confront Jeff at the gala. She'd been invited to give a TED Talk. Book publishers were calling with 7-figure offers. Documentary filmmakers wanted to tell the story. Harvard was inviting her to speak to their business school about ethical leadership. But right now, she was just here, in her apartment with her siblings. Her collection completed, her degree earned, her dignity not just reclaimed, but amplified into something that echoed beyond her own life. She thought about the golden dress, soon to be behind museum glass. A symbol of a moment when shame transformed into power, when invisible became unforgettable, when one woman's courage created an opening for hundreds of others to walk through. Her phone buzzed. Text from Coach Diamond. "Saw the graduation pics. You're not just a champion, Brittany. You're the blueprint. Proud of you, always." Brittany smiled, typed back, "We're all the blueprint. Every person who refuses to stay silent, every worker who stands up, every voice that says enough." She set the phone down and looked at her reflection in the window. Chicago's lights spreading out behind her like possibilities made visible. Not the terrified janitor from a year ago. Not even the transformed woman in the golden dress. Just herself. Strong, authentic, free. Because the real transformation was never about fitting into a dress designed for someone else's vision of beauty. It was about building a life and helping build a world where she and everyone like her no longer needed permission to take up space, to demand respect, to exist fully as themselves. The golden dress had been the catalyst, but the revolution was in what came after, in refusing to be defined by other people's cruelty, in turning humiliation into investigation, in understanding that true power isn't about revenge. It's about building something so authentic, so true, that the opinions of small-minded people become nothing more than distant noise you barely hear as you walk toward the future you're creating with your own hands. They tried to make her small. She built herself a throne instead. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button right now. Because Brittany's story isn't just about one woman taking down a corrupt billionaire. It's about every person who's ever been treated as invisible, told they don't matter, humiliated by people who should know better. Subscribing means you do not support people like Jeff Stevenson. Share this video if you've ever been underestimated. Share it if you've ever had to choose between speaking up and keeping your job. Share it if you believe that dignity isn't negotiable, that respect isn't earned through silence, that standing up for yourself and others is always worth it, even when it costs everything. Drop a comment telling me, What would you do if someone humiliated you like this? Would you walk away or fight back? I want to hear your stories. And remember this: when someone tries to make you feel small, they're not seeing you clearly. They're revealing themselves. And that revelation? That's where your power begins. Subscribe, share, stand up. Because invisible people only stay invisible until they decide they're done being quiet. Now go out there and take up the space you deserve.